The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank will continue to make headlines. Let's welcome back Karyn Cavanaugh, Certified Financial Advisor and Chief Investment Officer for Carolina's Wealth Management.
Thank you.
Good to have you back.
Thank you.
So SVB, not the only bank. Signature Bank in New York was another one that collapsed. We're still kind of going through the details of all of this and whether this is the bellwether for 2008 to come back.
Right, and that's what the big question is, and this is not 2008, and let's just be clear that the SVB that was a liquidity event, not a credit event. So banks are not in the same position as they were in 2008. But it just reminds us that when the Fed is raising interest rates aggressively, something is going to crack. I mean, there are going to be cracks that are exposed by that action. Yeah. And in the Silicon Valley Bank case, it was mismanagement, and it was really a mismatching of assets and liabilities that brought them down.
And a lack of experience, which blows my mind that you didn't have a single member of the board until last fall that had any banking experience.
Right, and they were without a chief risk officer for a while too. And obviously if you're running a bank, that's what you have to be concerned with. That's the task at hand. Yeah. And they seem to have a big social agenda versus actually like running the bank. And that was the mismanagement. And
how could that happen though? How could that happen, and how could the FDIC though allow for that to happen, or any other banking regulation to not take a closer look at the board and how things are being managed, with the Fed increasing those interest rates, which led to the collapse just a few
Well, the bank
ago.
has a leadership, and then the board is supposed to be an oversight or back that up, and they both fell asleep at the wheel. Mm-hmm. But remember, regional banks are not subject to the same stress tests as large banks. And so, but a stress test probably wouldn't have uncovered that mismanagement anyway. That was just a personal thing. The mismanagement on not having short-term assets to meet the deposits, the withdrawals from the depositors, that was their issue. And so I'm not sure if that stress test would have found that out. There's always going to be bad actors. Mm-hmm. But as a result now, we are going to have more regulations, I'm sure. There will be small banks that will close because they can't operate. It'll be too expensive for them to operate. And we'll have higher lending costs. So the backstop, you were asking before, the FDIC is a backstop. But now because of this bank failure, there's questions on why FDIC doesn't insure all deposits. Well, it can, but that's just going to the costs will go up.
The costs will go up, and then also if we're talking about the bailouts of 2008, so that's what we're not seeing. So investors with the bank, they're now having to file lawsuits, and you were mentioning before we got started the clawbacks. Right. You know, the corporate officers who made out very well just a month before the collapse, they're all going to be come after too and under scrutiny. But you know, actresses like Sharon Stone lost half of her money in this collapse. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm curious to know how we prevent this from ever happening again. Unless you have, it's like a utility, which is highly regulated by the government. Unless it's totally regulated, there's always going to be bad actors. Now, in this case, the depositors were made whole. The investors, on the other hand, are not being bailed out. But it's not like this isn't without a cost to the consumer, too, because the FDIC is insuring something that premiums weren't paid for. So somebody has to pay for that. So there's never going to be a way that you're ever going to be bulletproof on terms of you're never going to lose money on anything. But I think it made investors realize that they need to be more cognizant of where they're putting it. If it's a small regional bank, then they need to make sure that if it's more than $250,000, maybe they should spread it out. Thank you so much, Karyn. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
We're back after this.